So if I refer to some of our studies that we did at Forrester Research, I can tell you that we expect today about 50% of organizations globally to be ready for GDPR compliance, meaning that they are able to comply with the requirements of the regulation. Of course, because of the nature of the rules, we also know that this is an ongoing effort. There is no really a final stage where you say, well, I'm compliant, so my work is done. Actually, what we have done so far is just laying the right foundation so that we can help our organization to work over time, being mindful of GDPR and privacy rules. It means, for example, having built the right processes for making sure that you can comply with a data subject rights request. So when a customer asks to be forgotten, you have the right process in place to make sure that you can address that request. And this means not only looking at inside your own organization, it also means going and look at your third parties, because very often this personal data of customers or employees has been shared throughout an ecosystem of partners. So, building the process for responding to this request, building a way to really assess your third party's readiness for GDPR. Ongoing efforts. You have laid down the methodology, but now every time that you add a new partner to that supply chain, you want to make sure that you run that methodology through them to understand, are they ready for GDPR? And also as an ongoing exercise, you want to make sure that maintaining that relationship where privacy and security and those sorts of requirements are taken care of, it's very important. So those are examples of the way we define readiness, is having done some of the groundwork that would allow your organization to work over time, taking care of the rules. Clearly, there are some organizations that haven't tackled these at all, or for example have done some adjustments on their contracts, third parties or employment contracts, for example, and they have changed some of the consent notices if they had that, or they are changing the legal basis, for example, they are using to collect that data and process that data. We have seen other organizations focusing very much on their website. So thinking about cookie and the privacy notices, some of the consent notices that they display on the website. So these approaches are much more, focused on specific single requirements of the GDPR. It means that this organization will need now to create a comprehensive framework to make sure that all the work that they have done on single requirements is going to go in a more, comprehensive approach. Mm-hmm. So a very different level of maturity, but I think for everyone the message is keep on with your programs, make sure that you have completed the foundational work, mm-hmm. and now you're thinking how to elevate these in an ongoing manner, but also start to think about implication around the way you select the parties, or how this is reflecting to your customer experience. How you're going to make change to make sure that this privacy element is part of your corporate culture. So there are a lot of elements really to elevate the conversation from a compliance conversation all the way to a proper business conversation, thinking about the value that you deliver to your customer, and bending this privacy as part really and as part of the value and supporting that value. Well, first of all, take a look at what's existing out there. Take a look at the privacy touch points, which means if I come to your website, or if you're a bank, you come to the branch, or whatever is the engagement happening with your customer, go and review all the moments where the customer get exposed to your privacy material. It can be a consent notice, it might be a longer privacy notice, it can be something about data sharing with third parties. Go and see that material and wear the shoes of your customer. Just ask yourself, do I understand clearly what this company is trying to do with my data? Do I understand clearly the purpose? Do I understand clearly how long they are planning to, take to keep my data? And then, is this messaging helping you to feel comfortable about sharing the data with an organization? Is there something that you could do better as an organization to make sure that your customer feel comfortable about sharing that data with you? Inspire trust in the customer. Are you doing a good job explaining to the customer the value? If I, as a customer, decide to share data with you, what's there for me? Is more personalization enough as a value, or are we looking for something else? Are we giving customer enough control over the data that they share? So that's the first, really, start to wonder. Mm-hmm. And also, does it make sense that in the very first page of my website, I'm showing them this very complicated consent notice? maybe it's not appropriate. What data, have I started already collecting data even before this customer is there? Well, if it's a cookie, maybe yes, and you will define the appropriate language for that and will provide the appropriate information. But many companies are now working through their customer journey and trying to understand when across that journey makes sense to display a certain notice for consent, or makes sense to provide them with my privacy policy. Of course, we have done also studies to understand the privacy behavior and attitude of consumers. We know that consumers are not all the same when it comes to the ability of sharing data, their willingness to share data. And we know that some customers feel more encouraged when they clearly see that they can control data easily after they have shared it. And this encourages them to share data. Some other customers are looking for some other sort of value exchange. But this is something that is important to understand. What is my customer base looking for to really make sure that they feel comfortable sharing the data, what I can do to improve that. And then some companies have also run a number of pilot studies with their own customers to make sure that they are testing out the language. They are testing out also the opportunity to use consent in certain cases and see if instead maybe there is another legal basis that I can use instead if it makes sense. So really try to co-create the strategy with their own customers. Some of the best examples have started from this compliance work, but they now have teams that are wondering, how is privacy gonna change in the next 5 to 8 years? How the privacy expectation of my customers are going to change in this time, and how my organization can prepare to address their demands, their changing demands. And again, we are moving away from a purely compliance discussion to go to a discussion that touches on customer experience, but also how do I change my services and products as an organization. And at the end of the day, we are talking again about deliver value to your customers. That I can see already definitely is customers going for data access requests, right, to be forgotten. So that idea that I want to maintain the control over my data and I want to make sure that I'm on top of it. If there are issues with third-party data sharing, as a few that I trusted as an organization now have shared my data with third parties that I'm not aware of, well, I'm going to take an action as a response. We also see customers having poor experiences with an organization and as a reaction say, I want to be forgotten by you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. So really understanding that idea of control, we will see the behavior really reflecting this will to have control over the data. I think that, as the first big data breaches come up and consumers in Europe will be notified about that, we'll see changing behavior. This happened in the US, where customers are more used to receive notification, for example, and in other parts of the world, these sort of rules now are coming up about notifying customers. In Europe, it will be the very first time, and I believe that for many European consumers, that will be the first time that they receive a notice, say, hey, we lost your data. I think that we will learn a lot from the way they are going to behave as a response. I doubt consumers will ignore this. I really doubt. So the idea of the rules, in our rules we say that the individual is the owner of the data. I believe that in the next 5 years we will see really the behavior of our consumers change to embody this principle. So this is for me the bigger change, and regulator will drive this and regulation will drive this, but consumers' behavior is really what is going to make a difference, and organization will really need to work more to improve their data handling practices in general, to improve privacy. We'll see more example of companies really treating privacy as a differentiator in the marketplace.